March 18th, 1925, on an unseasonably warm afternoon, the deadliest tornado in U.S. history passed right near this spot. West Frankfort was one of 2 towns in southern Illinois that saw a loss of life more than 100.
Just try to imagine the disorientation of coming out from wherever you had digging out or coming out.
That's what it was like in Murfreesboro and for many other communities along a 219-mile tornado path, March 18th, 1925. Crossing parts of 3 states, it's simply known as the Tri-State Tornado. And it's the longest tracking tornado in U.S. history, and also the deadliest, claiming 695 lives and injuring more than 2,000. It may sound like a nightmare, but it happened here, and it's a storm that still leaves scientists mystified.
It looked like an environment that would happen today in the spring. It occurred in mid-March. We get these systems every year, but for some reason, Mother Nature decided to put on a show that day.
Mount Vernon native John Hart, who is a lead forecaster for the Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma, has studied tornadoes extensively, and he spent a lot of time studying the Tri-State Tornado.
These people were caught off guard. They were caught out in fields. Children were in schools. People were down in the mines. It hit Murfreesboro and West Frankfort, and people were at work. It was a weekday. So the first knowledge anyone would have that a bad storm was coming was the sky got dark.
And by that time, it was too late.
Employees at the ice plant here in town that they had to take cover in the ice locker. Another person was at the company store, the railroad company store, and they took cover in a vault of some sort.
Pictures of the tornado's aftermath, like these, line the wall at the Jackson County Historical Society, highlighting the path, which could not have been worse. Gorham, destroyed. 2 schools were hit in Murfreesboro. In DeSoto, 33 of the town's 69 that died were in a school. Farther east, miners in West Frankfort came above ground to find their houses gone, their wives and children lying in the rubble, and the small community of Parrish nearly wiped off the map. That night, it was the fires. They ravaged parts of Murfreesboro, and the effects of the damage would last for years.
For Murfreesboro, it was a real financial, economic game changer because Murfreesboro apparently had been a real boomtown up until the time of the tornado.
Today, you have to know where to look to see signs of the tornado. This marker sits in Longfellow Park. Longfellow School once sat right here. Homes now have been built in place where many others were destroyed.
Over the last century, meteorologists have wondered what the impact from the Tri-State Tornado would look like if it were to occur today. Would the destruction be worse, or are we better prepared? The closest comparison we have took place on December 10th.
There's obviously some differences, but in many ways they were the same.
Although the 2 tornadoes roared through our region during different times of the year, Pat Spoden, Science and Operations Officer at the National Weather Service in Paducah, says the atmospheric environment wasn't that different.
The main difference was that when you go back and you do the analysis, it actually traveled with the surface low, whereas the December 10th did not. It was much farther to the south. But the environment, somewhat the same.
What was different was the track of the Tri-State Tornado.
With the December 10th tornado, it went through, several towns, but it went through probably twice as many towns with the Tri-State Tornado. So you have a lot more opportunity to do a lot more damage and hurt a lot more people.
Christine Welgus, warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service in Paducah, says that people in 1925 also weren't prepared.
The U.S. Weather Bureau, which was what the National Weather Service was called back then, they weren't really even allowed to talk about tornadoes. People knew what they were. People feared them, but the U.S. Weather Bureau at the time did not issue tornado warnings.
Without warnings, people had to rely on word of mouth.
You might have had telephones, people telling people down the line that this was coming, but otherwise, it would happen in the middle of the day, happened in the afternoon, so people probably would have seen it coming, but they would have had no warning that it was possible.
Science, warnings, and preparedness have come a long way through the years, ultimately saving lives.
I think a lot of people are a lot more weather aware than, used to be. And it depends on a lot where you grow up and that kind of stuff. But still, people in this area have always been weather aware, and you have events like this that just it notches it up.
Knowing where you need to go and how long it takes to get there will help you get to safety before it's too late.
The main messages we've been talking about for years: inner room, lowest floor of the home, basements, storm shelters. We have proof from the EF4 that saves lives. There were many structures we saw where only the inner room was left, and people survived in those. They survived in bathtubs. They survived, wherever they could. And so those things still ring true.
I think that's a huge part of how this was different. And is it why almost 700 people died, that they didn't have that warning? You'll never know. Was it because it hit so many communities? You'll never know. But I do know we're in a much better place today because of the improvements and advancements that we've made, not only technology, but the way we reach people.
Coming up next,
there actually has been a shift of Tornado Alley.
The Storm Track 3 team looks at the climate surrounding severe weather and helps you prepare for the next tornado outbreak.